On you go, Sean. This is George Lees in the town of Coldstream.
And welcome to Out of the Bag. This is Sean Maguire on Healing Oracle Radio and People's Internet Radio, and I am here now after quite a while of trying to get us together, and we finally got an hour together. I'm with George Lees. Professor George Lees, how are you?
Really good, Sean. Sorry about the sort of raggedy arrangements, but I'm now officially homeless again, having been booted out of my safe house in Dundee. I'm now having to pay £80 to £90 a night for some of the hotels I've lived in, and I've explained that to Sean. It's my home region is the Scottish borders, and I'm in the town of Coldstream now, right on the border. That is the home for the Coldstream Guards, and I believe that they are the people that are outside Downing Street and outside Buckingham Palace with those Busby thingaby hats on.
Okay, so it's been a little while since we were doing our chats, and a lot of people were wondering where we were going from here. But you contacted me last week. I was very sick, to be honest. I just about managed to get my shows together, and I had already had guests and pre-records arranged. So I'm just wondering, what is it that I missed? What is it that you really wanted to get out there? And I know that you've had a couple of chats with John Patterson as well in the interim.
So last week, 10 days ago, I was still in Dundee, and on the last of those days, Prince William and Commoner Kate came to visit Dundee, and they opened for the second time the art gallery that was opened in midwinter on the waterfront in Dundee. And they did that because just a few days before, I had been talking about the concept that Prince William actually attended Davos this year. Let me get pictures now. Yeah, I know that your lot don't see it, but I just want to get Okay, so there is.
Okay, what pictures are you trying to get?
So this is the launch of the World Wildlife Fund, and the killing by all of the land grabbers that are in the Committee of 1001 and the Committee of 300. There's the World Wildlife Fund on my camera now, and that is the 1001 Club, the Goldsmith Ecologists, the Sierra Club, Greenpeace, Survival International, World Resource Institute. All of them are fundraisers for the British Royals. Yeah, that's why Prince William was invited by David Attenborough. David Attenborough is one of the world-owning bloodlines. That is the Battenberg dynasty of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Yeah, and there are... Say again?
So that's a direct bloodline to the Queen?
Yes, I believe so. So they're the Battenbergs, and they're the Wittenbergs, and all the family names because of the inbreeding in those families. And some of the names are not, as you know, the actual identity of the people that sire them. And that is the huge scandal that is the Rothschild breeding chamber. And in recent weeks, there is the joke that is Hitler Youth, and that is Joseph Ratzinger on the Committee of 300, and that is the Pope, yeah, one of the world's richest people who's been retired off in hotels too. He does not have to worry about where the next meal comes from, but the innocent people have to do that. There is the Ritz, the RTZ is a geopolitical organisation run by that mafia, Prince Philip Bernhard of the Netherlands and his wife Beatrix. Yeah, and there is RTZ is on the same listing as Shell, Unilever, Lonrho, which is BP. Yeah, that is the massive scams that Prince Charles uses his financial advisor, Christopher Chambers. Yeah, and I've got all the pictures of him and his directorates. You now understand better than anyone else. Could you explain to this audience what the meaning of the words "the man" are?
The man, did you say?
Yeah, who's the man in world and religious history?
No, go on. You're gonna have to remind me, George, because
Oh, surely after all those lectures on the nicknames for Arius Piso, you do not understand that he's the man. On every
Piso is the man.
Yeah, so that is the man, and that is the naming of all of Prince Charles's corporates. Yeah, and it's also the naming of Martin Sorrell's corporates, and he was wire, plastic, and something. But his last gesture before he packed up and retired was to say to me that here's my last company, and it's called The Man. Yeah, and that is everybody that goes to Mannheim as bricklayers. I've explained that to you before. That is the Auf Wiedersehen pet team, and they went there as bricklayers because the Roman governor who built Hadrian's Wall, which ends up in Newcastle, for all those Geordies that were in the cast, he was a brick manufacturer in Germania. Yeah, that's the Roman Empire in Newcastle made bricks for the Roman wall. That is the joke about Auf Wiedersehen, pet. Yeah, and they went to Mannheim to make the movie about bricklaying, and it's just a massive set of repeating piss stakes. So there's Lonro in Africa. That is BP for a laugh. Yeah, with Prince Charles on the directorates. And that is Tiny Rowlands, who asset stripped the whole of Newcastle too. And that is Tiny Rowlands, who was one of the earliest directors at Lonro, which was BP when Sir Alec Douglas Home, who lives right next to the hotel I'm in at the moment, this one's only £40 a night.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's Sir Alec Douglas Home, who carpet bombed the Garden of Eden so that the oil wealth that was BP could be kept out of local hands. Do you get the pagan plight now? Every story I tell you is about the stealing of their assets and the murdering of their families just because they refused to be reverent to Jesus, who never lived and who has completely replaced the sun god. There is the Shell Nazi sign opposite to Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands, and that is the massive Royal Dutch shell, yeah, with a swastika on it. Yeah, and that is the trading in the earliest days when you got those shells. What are the shells that have pearls inside them?
The oysters.
Yeah, so that's an oyster shell with the swastika on it, and the rays that come out from the swastika are the sun god Sol's, and that is the pagan god and the irreverence that all the humans are prepared to give him. If it's a man, please don't rile up your friends with those unknown issues.
In Ireland, because of the Shell to Sea issue and the fact that most Irish people had boycotted Shell as a company, they changed the name of all the Shell garages to Topaz.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, they changed them all the Shell garages in Ireland were changed to Topaz to fool the Irish public. And then when the Irish people started to wake up that Topaz was in fact Shell, they've now changed the name again to Circle K.
So Ireland's political enough to realise that Shell joke is a piss stake by the royals. Yeah, and remember that those royals are all embroiled into the bloodlines for the Windsors, and the land grabs are absolutely massive. So I've now scanned in that page on the World Wildlife Fund, the fall of the House of Windsor, totalitarian government and treason. So that protest against Shell was about the issues of price hikes at the forecourt, or was it just political?
No, it was because the Shell pipeline out in County Mayo, basically they had sold off all our oil reserves to I think Norway.
Yeah, that's the same in Scotland on the
Yeah.
North Sea.
Yeah, so it was really, and then the Irish people went there and protested, and then the Gardaí and the Shell security were very vicious, and they were like an army, and they attacked the protesters. So there was a lot of upheaval, and a lot of people very, very upset with how Shell, the company, didn't give a shit really about the Irish people and how they were treated, but also selling off our natural resources.
Yeah, so there now we're down to pictures of how the New World Order and the World Wildlife Fund have conquered the other. So you get countries, and what's the next biggest thing up?
Continent.
Geographically? Yeah, continents. So there is Africa under a picture of President Obama, and there at the top is the North African revolutionary that was Morsi in Egypt. And you now understand who that actor was that played him?
No, go on.
I think I've told you it before. That is Jim Royal in the royal family.
Right.
And that is exactly how they manipulate the news. And Timoshenko became the newsreader for Sky with her beautiful little curly-haired, and that is the Forbes rich listers that are just a cover for a different Timoshenko. And there is Miss Lagarde, who's still my Facebook friend. BNP Paribas, massive steals in the oil empires too. So there, and that is Benjamin Netanyahu talking to. All of this is on my website, Prof. George Lee's WWF, The Fall of the House of Windsor, Totalitarian Government and Treason. And there is Mark Carney of Carneville in the Alps, and his new mafia member that is Mervyn King. And Mervyn King is possibly, let me tell you about Butlins. That is the massive treason by my wife from Hemel Hempstead, where Butlins are registered. They are called Born Leisure, and there's a king and several generations of kings on the boards for Butlins. Yeah, they're called Born Leisure because that is the Borna Missa emperors of ancient Austria. Yeah, Butlins and the neighing donkey for Brexit. Do you get it? And this time it's a picture of North America, Canada and Antarctica. Or no, sorry, what's the North Pole? Where the Eskimos were?
The Arctic.
That's the Arctic. So and there is where Donald is going to have to build the wall to keep the indigenous peoples out of America now that the white master race have taken it over. And all of them, like Sir Alec Douglas Home, who we just mentioned, smoke the PISO peace pipe. And that is the Bushes who dug up the grave of Geronimo, and the skull was hung in a public place just for a laugh for George W. to show that they are stronger than America's native sons. It's absolutely endless. And there is Quentin Bryce. Do you recognise that name from our storytelling?
I do. Rob Bryce you were talking about. So
No, that's Rob Bryson, but that's Quentin Bryce, the Governor General for New Zealand and Australia, and she's the one that took the piss out of Mr. Bean. Yeah, Mr. Bean, played by Rowan Atkinson, was the war correspondent for Gallipoli, where 80,000 people died in their own shit in the trenches in 8 months. And Winston Churchill botched that campaign. Yeah, and all of it was reported by Mr. Bean the legend in the piss takes. And there's Mervyn King, who's on all the Rothschild interlocks, and those are the earliest videos I made with John Patterson, and he was completely confused by them. But Mervyn King is the Chancellor who preceded that one that is Carney. Yeah, and Carney makes his speeches on policy making over the stable door for the PISO horse. Yeah, that is the magnitude of their piss take. When he raises the price or changes the issuance of electronic money, I forget what they call that, he makes the statements on those economic crashes from this lower stable door is closed and he's leaning on it as they take the photos of him. And that is the massive ancient Roman story about Stabia, and that is where, yeah, it's no room at the inn for Jesus, it's the stables where Jesus was born, and Stabia is in the Mediterranean, right under Vesuvius, and that is the place where Pliny the Elder was killed by the eruption. And for Mervyn King, thousands of years later, it's quite hilarious, really, because he's the one that was the boss at the Bank of England who completely removed regulation. Oh, there's a beautiful Hannah Rothschild body double in the car park now. Right, so, and those are the war criminals in, I forget what that one is. I think he's Venezuela. Who was the military leadership man in Venezuela?
Oh, you'll have to give me.
Yeah, there's so many of those revolutionary claimants. And Schindler.
Well, there's one that's just been voted in by the people, but he's been ignored by the EU and all the other countries, and some other little Hitler is being recognised.
Well, I think that one is Chavez.
Okay.
And that is the joke about the Chavs and Harry Enfield. You remember that stuff?
I do, of course.
Yeah, and so the revolutionary in Egypt that was Morsi, yeah, fighting against Shakira's ancestors that are Mubarak. Yeah, that's the pop singer and the fascist wife of Formula One Piquet. Yeah, all of it is the same families. Yeah, and that will be the reason that they'll try and section me the next time. Yeah, I just want you to know that they are now beginning to realise that the whole of the leadership team in the Borders constituency that I am in are in breach of the UK Constitution. And I sent a letter to the Queen, and I had it delivered by recorded delivery post. She never confirmed receipt. That is the week that she sectioned me. Yeah, and
are you worried that you're going to be sectioned again?
They will stop at nothing. They will murder if they get the opportunity. But because I'm so public now, it's quite brave of you to participate. Yeah, when you realise what happened to Greg Hallett and how explicit he was with all of their photos, yeah, and this is just the same. All of these have been collated by me and published by others. Loads of it is published by David Icke and the likes on the statistics and all the boardroom memberships and which countries they've taken over. And I forget the name of that old woman, but all of them are in the English cabinet, and she's pictured at the World Economic Forum, like William was prepared to be. Let me see if I can find images of that.
Okay, so I mean, you're being very brave at the moment. I mean, is your life in jeopardy?
I believe it's always has been since Dr. Ian Fingland rang my doorbell. He did it 8 times and I refused to accept his suggestion that I was mentally unhinged. The man who came with him was Basil Switzer. And you now understand entirely that that is the Bank of International Settlements where Mervyn King and Carney went to train. All of them train, that's the Committee of 30, all of them are the federal banking leaders across the globe, in the fascist countries only. Yeah, and that's my letter to the Queen and PM Cameron on the crimes of our ancestors and the safe way out. So I sent it recorded delivery. The Queen never replied, but that week Dr. Fingland stormed into my house with Switzer, which is the cover for the Bank of International Settlements. And when you look at the top 100 Freemasons, Basil Switzer is on it a couple of generations ago. Yeah, all of it is a pre-planned, we can read the future, and we are going to make that count, which is why the dustbin lorry showed up within minutes of me trying to show the video of my political representative. That was Tom Weatherston. He's a nice guy, and he's one of the best councillors in the Borders, and he's the one that comes up to me when I enter back into Kelso. He tells me that John Lamont's here, and he's quaking in his boots because of what you have revealed about him. Yeah, and that is John Lamont, who's now my MP in Westminster. He's refused to meet me since 2009, and I told the people at the council building that are going to try and find me a solution to my homelessness. Yet they know now that that homelessness issue is based on my receiving my wife's divorce payments and carving up of my house. 30,000 of my share went on the legal costs for the trial. Yet she won. The victim has to pay, and that is me, who's been earning a six-figure salary ever since he met that woman, and that is the total injustice. You know how honest and innocent a man I am, and I understand deeply all of the world's politics and all of the world's economics, which is why I wrote to the Queen. Yeah, there's the letter. Prime Minister David Cameron, John Lamont MSP, Callum Kerr MP, the cover for Julian Callum Lamont. It's as simple as...
What did you write?
It's about the economics and the massive piss take that you can have a universal pan-global debt pool. Anybody that knows anything about accounting knows that there, on any balance sheet, there are debtors and there are creditors. Yeah, and all the creditors are, all of the funds for that are tucked away into their private societies, like the Edinburgh military tattoo. All of those things are solvent, but every government, every council across the world pretend they're in the debt pool so that the councillors can tuck it away. Like Julian Callum Lamont, it took me 4 hours to profile his directorates. Yeah, 3 different videos, and it's absolutely stinking. And that is the man who now represents me in Westminster. He was the chief whip for the Tories in the Parliament building at Holyrood, which is the constitutional monarchy. Yeah, the constitutional oligarchy, and it's right underneath a volcanic caldera. Yeah, that's the Arthurian legends, and the gods know where the villains are going to prop up, which is why in those great cities that launched every war, they have volcanoes. That's Clermont-Ferrand in France. All of the buildings are jet black because the bricks came out of the volcano. Yeah, look up Clermont-Ferrand, and that is right on the Swiss border, next to the Bank of International Settlements, which is the Basil Fawlty and the Marcus Manuel jokes about Manuel the waiter for John Cleese. Surely you understand the Bank of International Settlements scam now.
I do, yeah, and basically there's a lot happening in Switzerland, isn't there? And then
Yeah, so that's the launch of the Templars, that is the Crusades by them, and all of it is the mythology that you're fighting for the one true God in those Crusades, and that is their war chests were called ephods, EPHOD, and that becomes the is it an iPhone? Yeah, early on in the technology of mobile phones, they launched a new joke that this is the iPod, and that I think is the When Indiana Jones looks for the Holy Grail, that is what he's trying to find. It's the treasure trove that comes from the wars.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the one that was the Holy Grail was set in Egypt in the desert, and there was an ancient monarch sitting waiting for the people to come in and see him, and they had to reveal the keys, that they had the keys for the Holy Grail, and all of it is the same massive pistic as the Monty Pythons, that we are in searching for the Holy Grail. That is, King Arthur shouts up to them when he's just come across from England from France into England, and the French are already in charge of the English castles, and he shouts. Arthur shouts up, "We're coming to seek the Holy Grail," and the French, he says, "We've already got one." Yeah, and all of it is the giggling after that, and that is the Grail that is the communion service in every church across the world. And you know that that is not really every church across the world, because the Catholics did not do it properly, and that is why they had to be beheaded rather than being kings. Yeah, those are the most stunning videos that I've ever made, and I was in tears for most of the reading period before we made them, but that is the Glorious Revolution. And the same thing happened. Have I told you about the Norman conquest and the massive genocide that is?
Yeah, well, you can repeat it.
So all across Britain, and right into my wife's favourite places in Yorkshire, that's Sandal and all those places where, you remember the doctor that was MMR? I forget his name, but one of my videos on Lamont and Wheelhouse, yeah, is about war crimes, and the Wheelhouse family that was the Deputy Justice Secretary when I was lobbying them and sending letters like that. Yeah, that's Prime Minister David Cameron, Miss Patricia Tom, my wife's divorce lawyer. They have now, she's now screwed off out of her own company, yet that was focused on divorce, and she's gone back to the company that sold the house for my wife, and the companies that I chose to get the quotes for that house have now been taken out the recipe. That is Cullen and Kilshaw. Do you recognise the name Cullen from recent scandals in law enforcement and kiddie fiddling and Dunblane massacres? Do you remember it? Yeah, that's Cullen and Kilshaw are now the employers of Miss Patricia Tom, and they are the people that were allowed to sell my house, and I was not allowed to be in it when they gave the quotations, or I was not allowed even to agree that the quotations were amicable. It's a massive steal, and all of it is absolutely directed to ruin my career and silence me. But thanks to you and Patterson, but the things he tells me make me really uneasy. He's still on a royal commission, if you believe it. Yeah. Has he ever explained that role to you?
Well, not fully, but I mean, you know, if this Royal Commission is real, then hopefully there will be people arrested and we'll see actions. Otherwise, it's fake, isn't it?
Well, that's right. So that is the Queen of England, that is my arch enemy now, and all of that is completely logical. It's not hatred about her. But John told me that there are rumours that she died several years ago, and that none of it would surprise me because of the body doubles thing and because of what I've told you about Gerald Grosvenor, Britain's richest man. He's my mate Ken. He goes to Ireland, where the Grosvenors had massive estates, to relax. He gambles, and he sends me for nice meals to the casinos that the Grosvenors still run in Dundee, and there are 2 casinos in Newcastle. Yeah, and he's a dead ringer for the Duke of Westminster, and his sister is the feudal landlord, and her former husband is the recipient of this letter. Let me just play the video and see who else got it. be the lawyer for the Borders Council, who contactable by email. This is my open letter to HRH, Queen Elizabeth II, Prime Minister David Cameron, John Lamont MSP, Callum Kerr MP for my region, and he has already acknowledged receipt of that letter. Yeah, I'm being persecuted by the Jedburgh Law Courts and by my wife's divorce solicitor, who's Miss Patricia Tom, who's a Canadian, who used to be the lawyer for the Borders Council, who are persecuting me using the people that are the treasonous former bosses at the Borders Council, which has asset stripped everything that our country used to own. So there is, the next ones are Jedburgh Sheriff Court, Lothian and Borders Police, and until the last 2 months, every one of the emails that I sent to you guys as a jocular add-on to a serious video that I'd made, the Lothian Borders Police, what do you call it, hyperlink, has now been taken off. Yeah, that's because all of them are complicit in everything that is in the letter, and the name of the video, if you've never seen or heard of that incident that led to my sectioning, is My Letter to the Queen and PM Cameron on the crimes of our ancestors and the safe way out. Do you think that I'm always quite constructive, and I'm sometimes in tears when you hear about the mass massacres that lead to the ownership of the kingdom? Yeah, that video that we made with John Patterson when I was still in Dundee, the tears were welling up right through it. It's absolutely tragic that we cannot live peacefully with our neighbours, and that all of them are religiously following that thing even now. Yeah, they will not stop. Yeah, they will try to get me banged up again, and what they're trying to do now, since I lost the safe house when I revealed that Theresa May was on the Tavistock trainee list. Yeah, and all the stories about Hitler and Bush and all the links to the families that still run the world and those genealogical bloodlines. Yeah, you remember the videos that we made on Tyson?
I do, yeah. George, are there other people in a similar boat to yourself? Are there other people who are trying to expose things and are also in jeopardy?
Well, there are loads of folk that pretend that they are genuine analysts, but some of them are just covers for Murdoch's boards and things, and John Patterson makes interviews with all of them, and when I explain why that is a part of the New World Order to him, they all just reject it and giggle. And it's the same with the know-nothings. That is a massive, I'm going to sit on the truth and try and support the protests on that. I will get a little bit of beer money for my troubles, and that has been going on since Robin Hood was launched, and that is the know-nothings of Nottingham Forest. Yeah, and they, as we've discussed, they are a massive political party in America right up to the late 20th century, and that is the stuff that we were talking about the Whigs and the I forget what the know-nothings eventually became.
Yeah. I mean, the Whigs were liberals, weren't they?
Yeah. So do you get it? That is the Morgan Grenfell banking towers, and I spent ages explaining that to John. You now understand that that is Morgan Grenfell Bank. Yeah, that is the towers that were brought down. Grenfell is the police officer that was used in the St. Trinian's movies. The boss that is the
female.
Yeah, and all of them. So Craven, that was the man that was the boss at the Deutsche Bank and the Bank of England and the Morgan Grenfell Bank. Craven is part of British history since the Domesday Book, and that's what the video I made with John yesterday was on, the profiling. So the names that are on the listings on the Domesday Book include the De Percy, that's the Percys of Alnwick Castle, Perseus the poet in Rome. They include, what was the Queen's favourite comedians? Ernie and Eric.
Yeah, Morecambe and Wise.
So that's the Ernestine members and beneficiaries of the carve-up of England in the Domesday Book. Yeah, the 13th century, or before, that is William the Conqueror and all his secret bankers coming across, and all of it is a massive piss take. So the reason that Liam Neeson has been profiled on the news recently, and there's a picture of him. Actor Liam Neeson reveals hunting. Yeah, he's poses for photographers, and he's been alleged to have made an outspoken statement that I wanted to murder a black. So all of them know that this video is going to be made, and that is why in my original listings of the Domesday Book characters, there's one called a family called Claymore, and that is the swords that they used to use to fight the duels. Have you seen the duel? Oh no, you'll not have seen the movie. The Duelist movie with Harvey Keitel.
No, I've heard of this.
So that is the Lubavitcher dynasties coming from Eastern Europe along the Baltic coast, and those are the Lubavitchers that the Bush family tried to introduce as part of the Davidic diaspora, yeah, into the White House, and all of their regime became Lubavitchers in the last couple of years. And that is the massive piss take that they were the bankers and the duelists who used to fight, yeah, in those honourable battles for huge tracts of land in the carve-up that is the Domesday Book. So there's Liam Neeson, I wanted to murder a black. And the other families are Baldric, yeah, the joke at the war dead again. And if you look up, let me see if I can find the actual page that I was citing to John yesterday. I'll send it to you on Skype. So there it is. So the land of the Claymores of Yorkshire in Craven, Domesday Book Folio 380. The land of William de Percy in Craven. Yeah, that is Craven, who's the boss at the Deutsche Bank and the Bank of England. And all of the covers up for that Morgan Grenfell banking tower thing include the fact that Christopher Reeve was a boss at the Bank of England too. And that is Christopher Reeve that lost both his legs and then his life, because he's a massively influential actor, and he played Superman, and he is the one that, have you seen Remains of the Day?
I'm not sure.
So that's a movie about Lady Darlington and all the fascists in the north of England having meetings with the Yanks about how to make the wars shorter and the military operations quicker, and eventually they end up with the bomb. And all of the folk that are in the movie, it's the same man that made the Mayflower movie. He's the one with the word PISO in his name, Anthony Hopkins. Yeah. And that is the massive movies that so what they're trying to do in the movies is to professionalise war. And as soon as that man Christopher Reeve made that Remains of the Day movie, he lost his legs. Yeah, my bosses are quite intimidating. Eh?
And then he lost his life.
Yeah, that's right. He tried to launch stem cell therapy, and all of that is the same joke as even the bosses at the scientific institutions, they're massively engaged in the political frauds. I forget what the name of the man was that was involved in massive ruckuses about animal experimentation, but all of it is the founding fathers of Great Britain, and the massive Domesday Book and the Scottish equivalents are are just the same. That's the launch of the families into Arbroath on the west coast of Scotland, and it's quite tragic, and all of it is intertwined with the ancient religious movements that are the monks. Yeah, and every place that has a massive cathedral associated with Christianity, that's my hometown, has got Kelso Abbey, the place where the Balfours lived up the coast of Scotland, and that is Whittinghame, that's Arthur Balfour and the partitioning of Palestine. But all of those places are so ancient and the religion's been there for so long, they actually bring the mints into this country. That's the launch of the coinage. It's just astounding. And all of that medieval stuff is all published. And when I found it, it's quite amazing. So there's the names of all the ancient things. So previous owner, before William the Conqueror took over, Thorkill, Arnkeld, Thorkill, Gamel. Have you heard Peter Eyre ranting on about Bill Gamel and him attending George W. Bush's... George W. Bush attended his wedding in Glasgow, and through all my lobbying, the people that are Andy Murray's mother, and the what is the one that was the child politician for the Tories with the baldy head? So all of them, I used to lobby them, and all of them are now complicit in everything that everybody that failed to return my recorded delivery of that letter. Yeah, it went to 1,000 of my regular recipients, and that makes them complicit in the whole crime, which is why Gordon Bowden has tried to fuck up my contact lists on Gmail, and the emails still keep coming in. And that is the reason for that, is that none of them know who the people on that list of 1,000 are. Only I know that. And Gordon explained to me that they're trying to obfuscate all of the guilty people that are actually innocent people. And it's amazing how many folk were on that list. The Chelsea centre half was on the list, and they're now coming up to me and talking about him in the pubs. I've never mentioned it to anybody in the pubs, but he's I forget what his name is, but he was an England international right through until Southgate became the boss, and he played for Chelsea. And because his contact details were on the internet, I was able to get receipts from him for everything that I sent. And now he's accused of being, a sex maniac. And it's just amazing how the whole of it becomes a cover-up. So Gamel are the medieval owners, or they are the Anglo-Saxons. Thorkill, Arnkeld, Wilts, Ulkfield, Thor, Ravensvart, Gamel, Bern, Wilts, and that will be Switzerland again. Ravensvater, Ravenkeld, Ulf and Orm, and then you go down to the Claymores. So the reason that Schindler, the actor, was trying to murder a black man is that in the Duelist movies, he fights a duel with Archie Cunningham. Yet he's the baddie in the Rob Roy McGregor film, and Neeson is the goodie, and he fights with a claymore. And that is the reason why he's demonised himself in the news this week. Yeah, it's all the folk that own the whole of Britain. So the next one is quite stunning. Who would you say was the biggest war criminal that I've profiled recently?
You profiled recently?
Yeah. In the videos we made since Christmas. Trading with the Enemy.
Go on.
The Land of Gilbert Tyson in Craven. Domesday Book. And the launch of... What was the name of the boxer? Mike. Yeah? Yeah, so that is the Alpine Master Race from Austria and Germany that are the launch of Krups and the steel magnets. And that is the hotel that I've been paying £80 to £90 per day to be in, because the Brookses run it. And they, since I started to publish a website, are aware that I know that the family that took them over was called Krups, and they too are war criminals. Yeah.
Just letting you know, George, we've got just under a quarter of an hour to go.
Yeah. So it completely stunned me when I first saw this. Next one down, the land of Hugh Fitzbaldrick in Craven, Domesday Book, folio 327, and the letter V behind it, which I don't know the meaning of. Next one is the land of Ernie. Yeah, that's the Eric and Ernestine dynasties of the places that were immune from bombing in the wars. And that is the family that wrote the Aryan myths in Germany. Forget their name, the Grimms. So that is Ernestine, and the other one was, I forget what the other branch of that, but all of them were the professors and academics that launched the myths that become the demonization of the Jews in the wartime. So let me just read it. The land of Ernest de Bouron in Craven, Domesday Book. In 1066, a nephew of Ralph Tesson, that's the Tysons, yeah, Ernest de Bouron from Buron near Mons in Normandy, provided William the Conqueror with the money, men, and ships for the invasion of England. Ernie's, that's Eric and Ernie, every Christmas Day for the Queen, fought at the Battle of Hastings and is named in the Falaise Roll. Do you remember that Falaise is the name of their homes ever since they left Italy, and all roads lead back to Rome? Falaise was the home of Franklin D. Roosevelt when he lived in Selkirk and Galashiels, and I've made videos on their burial places for that bloodline. That is Fala the dog for Roosevelt on his lap as he entered into World War II, which he promised never to do. Yeah, all of it is the same families, and that is in the rolls of Battle Abbey. He settled in England 1068. The Domesday Book lists that he had 72 properties in Lincolnshire and Yorkshire. In 1086, he succeeded Hugh Fitzbaldrick as High Sheriff of Yorkshire. Now let me tell you about the genocide for William the Conqueror. He issued a command to all of his warmongering leaders that all of the Anglo-Saxons must not survive in any of the villages that you have jurisdiction for. So everybody got murdered if they were Anglo-Saxon, so that there could never be an indigenous revolution. And that is what happened in England. Yet it's total genocide, so that any form of rising up as the long-term owners of those places, it was north to south. It meant that every village was decimated of Anglo-Saxon people, and only the Normans were allowed to remain. And that is the jokes in the earliest sequences in the Robin Hood movie. Yeah, that I'm gonna launch by Robin Hood, the Know Nothing. He's gonna launch the war, yeah, on behalf of the Anglo-Saxons. Within 1 or 2 generations, there were none of them left on the British island. Yeah, and that is total war and the launch of everything that we've got now. And now we cannot smack our kids. So that's Hugh Fitzbaldrick as High Sheriff of Yorkshire. Next one, it's another Chancellor. The land of Osborne de Arc. Yeah, that's the Ark that we've just talked about, the war chest, and the Chancellor's take from the war. The land of Osborne de Arc in Craven. Yeah, and that is George Osborne, who has vast tracts of land in Ireland, like the Duke of Westminster, and he's forced to resign because his mother gives him pocket money on the issuance of shares on their furniture family, and what they sell are floorings and tiles. That is the joke about Pompeii and floors, meaning PISO in translation. Yeah, and that is my feudal landlord who's on the list for the letter to the Queen. Yeah, Guy Innes Kerr, and that is Martin McGuinness, and that is Insus on Jesus' cross. And in Donald Trump's bloodline, it is Fred Christ Trump, his dad. So if I'm going to get sectioned now, I'm waiting for an archbishop to get me between the ribs. Yeah, all of it is just a massive, yeah, they're trading in the name of God with every one of the pagan lands across the world. Yeah, and that God is Jesus, and he never walked this earth. And you now know that. Other than me, you are the person who holds the access to those huge secrets. So I cannot think that there are any more surprises on that list. But there is Rylestone. These are the locations for the carving up for the king's things. Don't know what that means. Rylestone, Hartwick, Appletreewick, Hartlington, Rylestone, Kilmsey, Coniston. Is that Ireland?
Coniston, not sure.
I think it's. And that's Coniston is in Cumbria, and there is the joke that the Duelist movie featuring Harvey Keitel, the indigenous family for Coniston was Kietel. Yeah, and just above him is Gospatrick. That sounds Irish. Gospatrick and Ulfkill, Kietel, yeah, and they are holding the lands of Appletreewick. All of it is biblical. Holding, and yesterday when I was reading it, there's a place called Rimington, and that is the naming of Stella Rimington, the boss. I can't remember whether she's MI5 or MI6. And she's probably the most innocent person in this story and has not murdered anybody other than the intel issues that are huge. Yet there are so many double agents and so many organisations that none of it can lead to freedom.
And I was trying to remember the Tory that was a young Tory MP.
Yeah, he's
William Hague.
Hague, that's right, and he's demonised in child trading with Angelina Jolie and things, but that does not prevent Angelina Jolie getting the equivalent of a baronetcy here, and she's massive part of that Austrian nobility. And in that Bring Me to Tears movie that we made on the Glorious Revolution, that is the laws of Austrian succession. It's just amazing how all of the names that are used in the telly. So Craven is not only the boss at the Bank of England, he's boss at the Morgan Grenfell banking issue, and that is the Morgan Grenfell Towers. But all of them, he's also like a Blue Peter presenter, and when anybody hears about John Craven, it's only the BBC one that comes up now, and all of the images.
News round.
That it was either trivial like Blue Peter, or he was a gardening program or something like that. But yeah, he's
a children's news show called News Round.
Yeah, that's it. So there is one image of him and the real Craven together. Let me see if I can find it. Oh no.
Well, no worries. Listen, we've only got about 5 minutes left, George. So if you want to just wrap it up now and anything that you think you've definitely got to say before we go, that would be great.
Yeah, so let me get the British Royals. So do you get it? That the whole of the world has been carved up by them under their offspring, and that is Mark Shand, ran the World Wildlife Fund, died in that revolving door in America between commerce and the massive scam that is the pretense that David Attenborough's life, he was also in Cumbria, and that's the Railway Children, and all of it is the cover for the Duelist movie, and the carving up by the Lubavitchers from Eastern Europe of the banks that were the world's biggest secret. And I've told you all about how much interest was levied on those banks. The first loans that John Patterson's relatives made to the Parliament in Britain returned a rate of interest of 1,250%. Absolute daylight robbery, and that is what we still have, and that's why all those families became corporate labels and stuff.
Disgusting too, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's quite noteworthy that the Borders Council have still not rang in to give me a meeting.
I'm hoping that they will phone you up as soon as we hang up from this.
Well, it would have been much more effective if you'd heard them saying, yeah, yeah, because
I hear you. It would have been good.
I did mention to them that all of my political representatives were guilty of exiling me from the region, and all of them are guilty of breaches of the UK Constitution for refusing to meet their constituents, which is why they bum me out of the region. And that, as I've told you before, is a tendering. And when that happened in William the Conqueror's day, or right up into the Tudor days, you had to get an apology from the Queen for tendering you and taking your right to pass on your wealth to your children. Yeah, you can see how popular it would have been. What happened was that the Crown retained the wealth, and you either lost your head or were burnt at the stake. And that's a tendering, and that is a massive breach. And even the court hearings that I've attended, where the press are not allowed to enter, no one's allowed to witness it. That Miss Patricia Tom engineered all of that, and they'll be from the patrician bloodlines of ancient Rome. And that is even into Dundee in recent weeks. The patrician story is the Speaker in the Houses of Parliament called the polis at the outside plebs. So that is the patricians versus the plebeians. That is the toffee-nosed versus the commoners, right through ancient Roman history. And what happened is that because I met body doubles for Lord McAlpine in Dundee and used to chat to them about... Do you understand that the families that were in charge before the Picts lost control of Scotland, you must understand the menace that is the mention of P&I at the beginning of the name. That is a piss take, that they have replaced the PISOs. So the earliest families in Scottish regal and royal history, and the claimants to the throne, that is the Del Rey throne. Is that in Ireland too?
No, it's not.
So they live in Scone Palace, where the stone of Scone is a massive legend about the right to sit on the stone before you can be crowned as a king or a queen. And the family that lived there was McAlpine. Kenneth. Yeah, and that takes you back to the Devil's Advocate movie. Who was the lead actor in that?
In The Devil's Advocate was Al Pacino.
Al Pacino. All of it the same words and the linkages to the families that were the first PISO popes. Yeah, and stunningly, there's families in my hometown, and they're related to Walter Scott, one of the chief master masons in British history. It's all a massive tragedy, and they are one of them married the dynasty that comes down from McAlpine on that Scottish bloodline, and their name is. It was also in. Who were the two Irish singers that used to sing and wear those hats with a cut bit in the middle? It's not a Shaughnessy, but so the woman in Kelso that I used to love as a child, like many of them, she got married to one of the families in that McAlpine dynasty, and the name is ever so Irish. I'll mention it on the thumbnail, and we'll be able to. I'll put it into the title or something.
Okay, well, George, we're going to have to end it now because you know I have to go out. So,
Yeah, sure. I just wish I could get his name. No, I can't remember it. But so look up Del Rey Dynasty for Scotland and Kenneth McAlpine, and look at the family trees on Wikipedia, and you'll see all the Irish links. It's absolutely massive.
Okay.
Is
well,
that
George? We're going to have to talk again, my friend, and good luck with your phone call this afternoon. Hopefully, you'll get a phone call with some good results. And,
I just want them to know that now I've got a big audience, and what you and John Patterson is promising me a massive audience. I just want them to know that all of them are going to be in the public eye, and the fact that I've survived for so long and I've gotten respected by so many people, thanks to you and Jim Fetzer and the likes. Yeah, I'm still worried about him. I don't know what's happened. But when I discovered that he's on Donald's family tree as Setzer, yeah, that I've never heard from him since.
George, I'm gonna have to say sorry. I'm gonna have to go, my friend. Okay, I've got things to do. McCarn is expected in the garage, and I better get there. And I don't want to be breaking the speed limit to get there, my friend. Okay, so we're gonna talk again as soon as we can. And thank you so much.
And get your listeners to look up Kenneth McAlpine and see what the Irish names all around him are. That is the links to. Yeah.
I'm sure they will, George. Thank you very much, my friend.
Cheers, old son.